Hello, everybody. My name is Christopher Sanderson. I am the Houston Section Chair as well as the South Area Chair for IEEE Region 5. I'd like to thank Aaron for volunteering to give this presentation to us. Very early in this COVID-19 pandemic, we decided to reach out to some of our partners and past guests to give some presentations during this uncertain time, I will say. And Aaron was very nice enough to come and volunteer and participate with us. I also like to thank IEEE USA for partnering up with us and facilitating this as well. So thank you, Daryl. Well, what can I say about Erin? I've known Erin for a number of years. She is a Forbes Coach Council member. She's a certified career growth and executive coach. She's a certified DISC, strengths, and EQI coach. And she's a recognized publisher and international speaker. And she also is certified in leadership psychology. I know her back in the day when she used to practice Six Sigma drills together. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce everyone to Coach Aaron.
Thank you, Christopher. I really appreciate that introduction. And I am a Lean Six Sigma Black Belt. And interestingly enough, I do use that in my career coaching. So I'm very excited today to share with you what the future of work might look like, considering our current crisis that we're in. What will be the result of that crisis, particularly the impression it will make on our emotional and mental well-being, and what will that look like moving forward as far as the future of work? In addition, what does that mean for the earnest job seeker? Whether you are considering looking for a new role or whether you are actively looking, this webinar is for you. So before we get started, I'd like to just turn off my video to make sure the slides advance smoothly, and then I'll turn back on my video to answer your questions at the end of the webinar. Okay, what is the future of work? Well, we live in uncertain times, and for those concerned about their careers, and rightly so, to those who are seeking necessary re-entry into the job market, everyone wants to understand what is the future of work. With my research in behavioral science, sociology, leadership psychology, and my expertise in the careers industries, I have quite a few insights into what you can expect in the months to come. What will the future of work look like, and how will it impact your career as we transition through and roll out of the current socioeconomic disruption? More immediately, we will see a rise in remote work. Now, this probably comes as no surprise to anyone. What might come as a surprise to some is that the desire to collaborate with others one-on-one will pass very quickly after reentry. As I was sharing with a group yesterday, while I have this burning urge to go around and hug everybody, well, not everybody, but all my friends, although I don't know, I might hug everybody, just give out free hugs. A lot of people will re-enter with caution, and rightly so. And what's important to understand is that while we'll have this surge to be social, that will fade. Even though most professionals will be thirsty to see people again, our remote work systems will be in place, and the processes will have already been streamlined once the pandemic has passed. A new normal will arise, and with it, more online work opportunities. Now, remote work has its up and downsides. As a plus, it opens the door for an even more globally connected community. It empowers families to work from home, save on commutes, and benefit from a wider array of industry jobs, which is a great thing. The potential of being almost completely virtual for all quote-unquote desk jobs is tremendous, and the companies will also be able to leverage great savings potentially on real estate. However, as the need to show up at the office declines, several other industries will take a hit. When you're thinking about moving forward in your career, keep these things in mind. Number one, and also not surprisingly, oil and gas will suffer from the reduction in commuters. While our environment won't miss the pollution necessarily, our declining industry and energy industries will need to pivot their business model to remain key players. You can also expect that there will be a rise in contract versus full-time employment, particularly in the energy sectors. Now we'll say, well, no, will not only be in the energy sectors. This is already happening globally. And as we started talking a number of years ago about the gig economy, we're seeing a backslide on that gig economy. I expect the gig economy, quote unquote gig economy, to turn back around and be more prevalent moving forward. Unfortunately, a few other industries that will suffer is real estate. As the need to have office declines and more office space hit the market, industries that also support the office culture will see changes as well, such as cleaning companies, landscaping, office equipment, and food preparation. So that amazing community coffee that you enjoyed at work, those types of companies will suffer as less people go back actually into the work office. Now, it's not all doom and gloom. As a matter of fact, I would like everyone on this call to know, or this webinar to know, that there's a lot of panic button pushers out there, and I highly recommend that you get your news from a source, a guaranteed source as much as possible, because even news reporters all have an agenda, unfortunately. So there are a lot of panic news out there. There's a lot of emotionally they really focus on stirring up your emotions versus reporting the facts. And what I would like to help everybody understand is the job search market is not as desperate as some people make it out to be. Now, I'm not saying it's good, but it's not as bad, because I do have clients right now who are interviewing. I have clients that are actually onboarding virtually. While a lot of roles are on hold and the process is slower, there is movement out there, so please don't despair. And also keep in mind that there will be industries that will be on the upswing. Some, for example, is any company that will allow us to more easily isolate ourselves. Interestingly enough, like Amazon or grocery delivery. While socioeconomic disruption isn't exactly new for the human race across the globe, it is completely uncharted territory for two distinct generations. It is also the first time we have witnessed right front and center just how connected our global community is and how interdependent we've become worldwide. If you ever needed proof that we are now a global organism, now you have it, for better or worse. For those people identifying with Gen Y or millennials, and those people who identify with Gen Z, these are unprecedented times. Based on these two generations' inclination towards virtual space and leveraging social media to create that illusion of connection, I foresee that we'll be propelled into an increasingly more virtual environment as we move forward at an exponential rate. Interestingly, months ago, I predicted that Gen Z would be that generation that would open the floodgates for a virtual environment. And I believe that will be ramped up even further than we originally thought. Because for Gen Z, the virtual space is already normal. Virtual platforms that not only work, socialize, learn, and pseudo-engage with others are increasing and will take off tremendously as a result of this current pandemic. Also, because of the deep emotional impact this current crisis is having on the masses, expect there to be few quirky trends in the future. It will become even more important for people to feel like they can easily isolate themselves with a sense of control and keep a social distance if needed, only more conveniently. Even though initially people will be hungry for social contact, expect there to be a great deal of caution involved, and rightly so. Sadly, though, we actually really truly need in-person contact on a primal level to remain mentally and physically well. Regardless, keep Keep your eyes on industries that can help our social structures isolate more easily while remaining connected virtually, because they will all be on the rise. When it comes to your career, be prepared for the future of work. If you're looking for a job, do not let, as I mentioned, the current disruption derail you. This too shall pass, and with it will come a new normal. While it's early days yet, we will discuss the observations I have for the future of work and your job search. The number one question I get right now from job seekers is, do I still go ahead with my job search? And without hesitation, my answer is absolutely yes. And here's why. The job search was already mostly digital. While most of us are working from home and practicing social distancing to help flatten the curve, when this is new and outside of our comfort zone for many of us, for recruiters, on the other hand, it's business as usual. The myth that 80% of jobs are found through networking originated around about 10 years ago. That number today is closer to 45% or less. While networking is still very powerful to elevate your career, it has a different influence and purpose than it once did, than just straight networking to find a job. Most importantly, what we probably want to understand is, how can the isolated job seeker conduct a successful job search, and what can you expect from the job market during this current disruption? Well, what I know is, while some positions are on hold for now, most companies are still hiring that were originally hiring to begin with. And because sifting and vetting resumes is largely done automatically with applicant tracking systems, or ATS, and screening calls were always done by phone or video, and interviewing was vastly more virtual already, nothing much has changed in the hiring landscape. I will say that the hiring process is a little bit slower. What is interesting to note is, for need to fill roles, even companies who have been historically loath to hire people without an in-person interview are now moving forward with multiple virtual interviews because these positions need to be filled. Now, what's unfortunate is an effective job search is largely a mystery to most professionals. That's not surprising, because quite frankly, you've been focused on doing your job well, not trying to figure out all the ins and outs of how to conduct a successful job search, because quite frankly, I know it takes a lot of research. Unfortunately, also, the tried and true methods simply do not work like they used to. The good news is, anyone can land a job online if you follow the right process. What we'll talk about today is, are there any job search myths that are holding you back from seeing the results you want to see? And also the core curriculum for an effective career growth strategy virtually that many people miss. And last but certainly not least, how to position yourself to take advantage of opportunities that are in front of you. What are some of those job search myths? Well, we've already talked about one, which is 80% of jobs are found through networking. That is not the case. I'm not saying networking isn't important, because it is. It is important. And the clients that I have that are most successful not only apply online with a highly targeted and online compatible resume, but they also leverage their networks. Now, it's a sliding scale when it comes to the importance of networking. The larger the company gets, the more likely the hiring process is HR driven. And even if you have someone internal that's vouching for you, you will probably still have to go through the same process everybody else does. Unfortunately, that means some people get kicked out and don't actually make it through the system, because the hiring process is much more HR driven with larger companies. Now, conversely, with smaller companies, it is less HR driven. And how you will know whether you're interfacing with the applicant tracking system is very easy, because you will have been given a link. You'll go and click that link, and you'll have to enter a password and username, and you can't get around the system. But if you are given an internal company extension email to email your resume to, it might not be an applicant tracking system. So just keep that in mind. Networking is vastly more impactful the smaller the company gets, if that makes sense. The other myth is, and I still get this to this day, short resumes. Everybody has a short resume. No, that's terrible. Don't do that. Actually, you can have up to 3 pages in your resume. The reason you hear all this gobbledygook about short resumes is quite frankly because at the recruiter level, they don't want to read. Okay, well, you need to get a job, not make necessarily the recruiter happy or whatever that looks like. And interestingly, the only people that actually complain about a 3-page resume that I've ever heard about are the people that are going through final interviews. So obviously you got them the interview. But the problem with a short resume is it doesn't give you enough room to articulate your accomplishments. It also doesn't give you enough room to target your resume for the roles you are looking for, and it doesn't give you enough room to make sure you meet the job match at the applicant tracking system level. The other myth is, and I see that from time to time, is that listening to experts in your field and let them tell you how to develop your resume. Well, the problem is they're subject matter experts, which is great. You definitely want to leverage their knowledge and learn from them, but they might not be resume experts because resumes are a different animal. You want to make sure you go to an expert about resumes, not listen to an SME, perhaps in your technical field. Using the cover letter to tailor your dossier. Okay, don't do it. You want to use your resume to tailor your dossier because, one, the cover letter is not sourced by applicant tracking systems. It's not parsed in. They don't even read it. You need to have a cover letter, absolutely, but it's more of a check the box mentality because less than 10 to 12% of cover letters are actually read. Now, depending on type of role you're going for, if it is more niche, more expert, or certainly more elevated within the organization, say a director, SVP, etc., it is more likely that your cover letter will be read. But you need to have one. I'm just saying don't expect to tailor your cover letter and have that work for you. So also a big myth is applying for jobs that you're a 100% match for because you'll be guaranteed. No, don't do that. For one reason, you'll be bored very quickly. And for another reason is you want to give yourself a bit of a stretch goal when you apply for positions. I see this happen quite a bit with very experienced professionals, interestingly enough. For people that have like 25, 30 years experience, they want to check all the boxes. Well, you need to be moving up. And then what happens at the hiring manager level is they look at your expertise, they look at the job, and they say the same thing. Well, this person will be bored and looking for another job. It takes a lot of money to onboard these people. We don't want that. So apply for a job that you have a little bit of stretch room. Other job search myths, believing HR professionals and recruiters know everything there is to know about navigating the job search. They don't. They know what they know, and that's usually it. HR professionals know about the administrative side of HR, and they're not even that savvy with applicant tracking systems because that's a technical function. And recruiters know what they know about recruiting, but they don't know everything they need to know about navigating the job search because they give out a lot of bad advice. Not all of them, but some of them do. So just keep this in mind. These people are also my clients. So you want to go to an expert to get the right information. Also thinking that a recruiter will help you find a job. Just bug the recruiters. They'll do it for you. No, they don't work for you. They work for the employer, not for the job seeker. So if there's not an open job rec and you're not an ideal candidate, probably crickets. So just keep that in mind. Also believing in a hidden job market. Well, there is no such thing. There is no secret handshake society. Okay, everybody has access to the quote unquote hidden job market. All that is honestly roles that were never advertised quite simply because they already had someone slated for the role. Full stop. Whether that was through in-person relationship or whether that was because someone was slated from an internal move up, an internal hire or internal transition. So that is what that is in a nutshell. And you can access that too. Just leverage your network. Now, again, like I mentioned before, because the hiring process is very HR driven, it depends on which organization you're working with, whether that will work. Also thinking that a resume writer will create guaranteed online compatible resume. I haven't seen one yet from a resume writer that was 100% online compatible, unfortunately. And I've seen people spend a lot of money for them, and it's still not online compatible because online compatibility means it has to be very, very plain. It cannot be fancy, no graphics, no fonts, no text boxes, no page numbers, in fact. So you want to keep in mind the formatting is huge and it needs to be plain. Anything else may not parse well, and you want it to. Also thinking that your resume writer will help you articulate your expertise. Some do, but very few of them. So just be clear on what type of service you're getting before you sign on the dotted line. Now, most importantly, how do we create an effective career growth strategy? For a lot of people, this can be a daunting process, as my client Jaime mentioned. And if you have the right information and the right process, you will see success. So let's talk about that. First of all, understand that you need to be prepared for a virtual job search. While nothing much has changed in the hiring landscape, right now and moving forward, the job search process will be even more virtual than it is already. So more interviews will be online, which is, I know everybody's super excited to hear that because everybody loves talking to a camera, right? That's so much fun. No, it's not. It's terrible. So I have a piece of advice for you. If you struggle with talking to a camera, cut out a photo of ideally someone you like and put it right beside the camera lens, and that'll, one, help you focus on the camera lens, and two, pretend as if you're talking to a real person. Good news is many roles that are on hold will reopen. What you need to know, and I will reiterate this later, is that you don't want to wait. You want to get in front of people now. If they are accepting applications and they have an open job rec, put your resume out there, because what they won't do is they won't go back post-pandemic and reinvent the wheel. They will look for through all the sifted and vetted resumes, and they will call those people first. You want to be in front of the tsunami wave that is coming because of all the wait and seers that are waiting until after the pandemic, and then they'll leap onto the job market. Get in front of those people. But expect to have less human interaction and more automation. In fact, automated recruiting is already out there. Adobe's leveraging it right now. What else? Online compatibility. You have to be online compatible. All resumes, I cannot say this enough, have to be online compatible. You can't just hope that your network is going to do it for you. Like I said, that's less than 45% of jobs are found to do that. I'm not saying it's not important. Networking is important. You need to leverage all your tools, including your LinkedIn profile, which will have even more importance than before. Your LinkedIn profile is your full dossier. And I stumbled across this little nuance years ago. I won't tell you how long because I'll date myself. But if you are in a role and you have expertise external to that role, in other words, expertise that arguably people that you work with may or may not know about, because quite frankly, people only know what they, see you do, and that's about it. So if you have expertise and you want to demonstrate that expertise or articulate that expertise, LinkedIn is a great place to do it. You want to polish your profile and make sure that it is outstanding and top-notch, because that is your full dossier. And guess where the first place anybody receiving your resume will go? LinkedIn. Same thing for people who want to connect with you. LinkedIn. LinkedIn right now is the place everybody goes. So you want to be present and you want to establish your brand online. Virtual networking. It's early days yet, but virtual networking events have already begun, and they're getting better. They're a little awkward, but there will be a big push to make more online events, and they'll be more adaptable, agile, and engaging. So I'm looking forward to that. However, please note that there is one little nuance we need to keep in mind. The human brain and body, as of right now, has not evolved to the point, and certainly won't do it in 15 years, to where we exude, that sounds terrible, but where we create the right chemicals to actually connect with people strongly in the absence of one-on-one contact. It's just how we are as human beings. How we've evolved is we build relationships and develop trust and that know-like trust factor in person. Those chemicals are released from the brain in person. It does not happen over the internet. Now, video calls can simulate some of that, but I'll share with you, it's just not the same. So they need to work on this to see if they can get around our little evolutionary hiccup, but that's fact right now. But it's still important to go to these virtual networking events as much as you can where it makes sense. Your online brand, well, you need to market yourself because no one else is going to do it for you. Like I mentioned before, platforms like LinkedIn will be the stage for professionals to articulate their brand in absence of one-on-one contact. Let's just say that you're working more remotely. How in the world is your remote boss going to figure out, what you're capable of? Or how in the world are you going to make, establish contacts with people remotely? Well, LinkedIn is a way to establish yourself and make that presence known that you are an expert or you do have expertise in certain areas and you have value as a professional. We have to show up, however, online. Now, I will say this, whether you are employed or whether you're looking for employment, it doesn't matter where you are in your professional strata. When you're online, you have to show up to virtual meetings. Now, what do I mean by that? That doesn't mean just logging on. That's not what I mean. Because I know we have all been in those meetings where you have several people on your screen and you can see all their faces and they're all like, whoa, they have no expression. And they all look bored, or they're doing things like picking their teeth or their nose or something awful, or playing with something. I mean, or you're obsessed with their background, or they have their sweatshirts on, or they're still in their pajamas and their hair is a mess, or whatever's going on. That is all your brand. When you get online, you are visual to people. They can see you. You have to show up. You have to show up. So if you are speaking, modulate your tone. Just imagine if I gave this entire webinar in the same tone of voice, you would all be asleep in 5 minutes. Also, leverage your facial expressions. Now, while I'm conserving bandwidth to make sure you all have a great experience, normally we would have this video on, and I will have it on in a minute, but you need to leverage your facial expressions. You have them. And what's interesting is over a virtual landscape, we want to make sure that we over accentuate our facial expressions and our tone of voice slightly. So go to your norm and then add 30%. Because the people you're speaking with and interacting with, they cannot experience that 360-degree view of you. In order to get past that barrier and see who you really are, and not just think that you're bored because you have no expression on the camera, you have to show up. So that's what I mean by showing up. Be true to your brand, dress as if, be concerned about your background, because if everybody's looking at what's on their shelf back there or some sort of weird artwork or the fact that you're working from your storage room or whatever's going on, we want to be aware of all these things because everything that they can see within their visual range is a part of your brand. So that's what I mean when showing up, because right now and moving forward, this will be critical and people will get more used to it, but I want you to get ahead of the curve. Speaking of getting ahead of the curve, what can you do to stand out? Well, first of all, you have to have a career target to aim for, because if you don't have a career or target to aim for, it's very difficult to hit one. Here's the thing. I encourage you to stay focused and continue your search. Even if you aren't currently looking, but your instincts are telling you that you should, pay attention to your instincts. We're living in uncertain times, but there is one thing that is certain. If you aren't prepared, you cannot take advantage of opportunities. Okay, so number one, you have to have a career target to aim for, because your entire dossier must be tailored and relevant to the roles you're seeking. It's like this. So think of jobs as like a family tree. You want to aim for jobs that are kind of on the extension of the same branch. So they need to be adjacent or highly related to one another. That will help you focus your dossier. And that, when I say dossier, is your resume and your LinkedIn profile. So your entire job search marketing plan. In other words, you need to have a target, because quite frankly, if you don't, it's very difficult to get through applicant tracking systems. It's very difficult to get through recruiters who have finely tuned their brain's natural inclination to find patterns to sift through your resume in 5 to 6 seconds or less. And you certainly won't stand out to hiring managers because they're looking for relevant examples of how you've applied your skills and expertise on the job to a net positive impact. So you have to be targeted. Can't say that enough. Please do not create a dossier that is, oh, general, so you can hit a wide array of roles. No, bad. It will not help you. It will certainly not help you, because what people will do is they'll look at your dossier and go, oh, they haven't decided what they want to be when they grow up. People want to hire people who know what they want. Speaking of, have an online compatible resume, as I mentioned before. Now, what that might look like, as I mentioned before with you, is simplicity. Think simple. And it's things that, unless you know, it would totally fly under the radar for you. I don't know how many resumes I review that is in Times New Roman font. Well, Times New Roman font only works in about half of the applicant tracking systems. The other half, if it's using an optical scanner, it turns it into some sort of foreign language. It does not translate well. So it's just little things like that really matter. You need to be online compatible. So think simple, think plain, don't have anything in tables, text boxes, no fancy fonts, etc. And I will certainly get to your questions because I know you'll have some questions about that in the Q&A. Polish your LinkedIn profile. Now, what that might look like for you is, number one, get a good profile photo. For pity's sake, do not take a selfie in a car. If I see one more car selfie, I mean, congratulations, you got a car. That's good for you, but don't put it on LinkedIn. Okay, so don't do that. Take a selfie that is professionally representative of your brand, and most importantly, the jobs you're looking for or where you want to go in your career. If you're not looking for a role and you're just seeking to move up within your industry, inside your company, where do you want to go? And act as if, dress appropriately. And guess what? You don't have to pay a photographer, and right now you probably couldn't do it anyway. Phone cameras are wonderful. You can take a selfie and edit that background on LinkedIn natively right there. So also your about section, make sure that you have a couple career contribution stories that are explicit examples of how you have applied your expertise to a net positive impact for the companies, clients, or teams that you've been with in the past or currently. And most importantly, prep for a digital job search, because it's already vastly digital, to be honest with you. So not a ton has changed, and moving forward, it will be even more digital. So where we have maybe had 6 to 7, and yes, they're doing many interviews. I'm noticing that over the past 2-3 years, interviews have gone from 1 to 2, maybe 3, to now 7 and 10 interviews. It's a little crazy, in my opinion, but they really do want to make sure you're the right fit. So just be prepared for a more digital job search. Be prepared to interview virtually more than you already do. Hey, and there we go. Be prepared to interview virtually. I'm getting ahead of myself. But you know what? Most importantly, you need to be able to articulate your value in your resume, on your LinkedIn profile, and in the interview. The biggest disconnect I see from almost every single resume and every profile I review is a glaring lack of career contribution examples. And that is simply, as I mentioned before, an explicit example of how you've applied your expertise to a net positive impact. Let's talk about how to position yourself to take advantage of opportunities that are out there now and will be releasing later on down the road. Number one, your resume must be relevant. Remember that target I mentioned earlier? This is what this is. It must be relevant to the jobs you are applying for, i.e. the job match. So it must be aligned. It must be relevant. There must be enough consistency and congruency there to where it makes sense. Right? It also must demonstrate that relevance in the first half of the first page, because recruiters are not going to read your entire resume. They just aren't. Okay, so this is what happens. They scan the first half of the first page. They see or don't see what they want to see. If they do, they'll flip through the rest of it or scroll through the rest of your resume, looking at position titles. That's right. That's what they do. That's what most of them do. So your resume must also clearly articulate your accomplishments. And that's for the hiring manager as well as the recruiter, because your hiring manager wants to know what you as an asset will deliver that company. Full stop. That's what you are. You are an asset. Well, what's missing from most resumes? Well, the vast majority of resumes don't have those career accomplishments. As my friend Rick Gillis says, your work does not speak for yourself. You do. Most of the resumes flying around the digital space do not discuss explicit examples of how individuals have impacted the organizations they work for. Most of them are just mindless list of bullet points and a list of roles and responsibilities, which doesn't help anyone stand out. Quite frankly, I mean, there will be a massive wave of job seekers hitting the market. It is critical that you stand out, and you can't do that with just listing, well, I did this and I did that, and there's no impact, and there's no examples, bring yourself into that dossier. Because if you want to elevate your dossier and grab the attention of recruiters and hiring managers, you absolutely must provide these explicit examples. And this is literally how you've leveraged your expertise to a net positive impact on the business, your team, or your client. So what you can do here, and Chris mentioned that he would be happy to send out the link. I do have a impact inventory guide that I'm sharing with everybody that's participating. This is tremendous because this is a guide that I share with my clients to start working on their dossier. This will help you tremendously. So don't feel like you have to remember everything I say. Just know that link is coming to you. You can download that. But I would like to just go over the highlights with you to make sure that we hit home on some key points. So first of all, when you're creating what I call an impact inventory is simply a list of your career accomplishments, your career contributions over your professional history, basically. Now, if you've never done one, you don't have to go back more than about 8-10 years. And the further you go back, the less detailed you really need to be. Because quite frankly, who can remember back that far? But you want to start your most recent position first and create a comprehensive list. Now consider everything you've done to positively impact your work, your company, or your client. Don't get lost in the fact that you feel like some of this, oh, I was just doing my job. Or don't let the thought of your bragging derail you, because it's not bragging. Okay, there's no room for bragging in an impact inventory. You are simply stating facts. That's all you're doing. There is no bragging going on here. But what I do recommend is if you, say, work on projects, for example, you want to address the business case. So what was going on? What was the catalyst for that project? What was a high level detail? Like, what are the important bits? Did you manage a budget? What was a cross-functional team? Was it a constrictive timeline? Did you mitigate risk? Did you, create efficiencies? Whatever that looks like. And then what's the impact? Why does what you did matter? Okay, now this is missing in most everybody's dossier. I've only seen 2 people in all the years I've been doing this that actually knew how to articulate their accomplishments. And interestingly, they were Lean Six Sigma black belts, but that's neither here nor there. So, but you want to create that value-driven dossier, and your entire dossier must clearly communicate why you're an ideal candidate for the roles you seek. This is non-negotiable. Okay, it is not negotiable. In the past, and like take for my husband, for example, he is an expert in his field. He is widely known as the expert in his field. And that has treated him very well over the years. But moving forward, that may or may not be something he can rely on. Okay, because we're going into a very, very digital space. We have to get over our fear of bragging and get over ourselves. And I get it. Talking about yourself is hard. It's easy to point out value in other people and not quite so easy to do that ourselves when the tables are turned. But it's important to articulate your value to stand out in the job market or sit on the sidelines. As I mentioned before, it's tough to talk about yourself. So I have some key points for you. And again, Chris mentioned he would share with you the link so you can get access to that impact inventory guide. But I want to just go over a few things, a few talking points I share with my clients. One of those questions would be, what has been the biggest challenge you faced in your role? What did you do and how did it turn out? What was the result or the impact of your actions? Another question is good is, what are you most proud of to have accomplished? Can you quantify your impacts? Quantifying is very important. Now, I will say that when you're quantifying, which means percentages, percentage increase, decrease, whatever, or dollars and cents, if it's dollars and cents, I don't recommend you put that on your LinkedIn because your LinkedIn is a public domain. And just, it's not the best idea unless those dollars and cents are public knowledge or widely known in your industry, or basically quote unquote public knowledge in your company, and you're not under NDA or not, that you can't share that. So just keep that in mind. If everything's wonderful and you're free and clear, then share the numbers. But if not, you might want to be just cautious about that. Another great question is, what have you done to improve a process, a procedure? Have you improved communication, production, customer service, or avoided a risk? Have you saved anyone time, your employer, staff, or your team, or even yourself? Because time is money, right? And quantify if you can. How many people were impacted? How often did something happen? Was it once a month? Was it a report this one run twice a week? How many, did it go from 3 people doing something to 1? I mean, what does that look like for you? So you don't have to be necessarily a salesperson to have had impact on a business. Okay. And although this process is incredibly important to be specific, please don't fall back on any general statements, right? And again, don't worry about bragging, just simply state the facts. And don't allow your inner critic to tell you that your contributions don't matter. Last time I checked, your inner critic wasn't hiring anyone. And if you can ignore your inner saboteur, articulate your contributions, develop an online compatible resume, and polish your LinkedIn profile, you will rise above the noise. And when this pandemic passes, the job market, as I mentioned before, will be flooded with applicants. So it's critical to prepare now and have the tools you need to land the job that you want in this increasingly digital space. With that being said, Chris did mention he'd share this link, but I just want to share this with you now as a free impact inventory guide. Now, free doesn't mean cheap or cheerful. Okay, cheap and cheerful is not what it is. It's very impactful. It is process oriented. Surprise, surprise. I'm a project manager and Lean Six Sigma black belt, so of course it's process driven and a little bit methodical. But it's important because so many people struggle with this. So I really break it down to help you articulate your career contributions. And even if you are not seeking another job, perhaps you're going, this plays into performance reviews. In fact, I'm coaching a young lady right now. She's prepping for her performance review, and we're leveraging this tool. If you are going for a role internally or want to ask for a raise, this is a great tool to have because you need to be able to articulate what your impact is on the organization. And don't expect that your boss knows, because they don't. No one knows what your impact is better than you. You have to be able to articulate that. Now, during this current crisis, I am offering my Career Moves Masterclass. That's kicking off the first Monday in this coming month in May. I'm giving a $100 discount for everyone that is participating in these calls in this webinar. And this link will also be shared with you. But this Career Moves Masterclass is not a DIY program. Okay, it's not a do-it-yourself. You're not on your own. I am coaching you through this. So it is a group coaching class. It is 4 weeks, and we go through how to articulate your contributions, how to create an online friendly resume, cover letters, LinkedIn, how to polish your LinkedIn and leverage your LinkedIn profile, branding, my proven job search strategy that will save you up to 75%, and that's proven on your job search time frame. How to manage recruiter calls. I mean, tell me how much money you make, how to do networking, virtually and in person, and what that looks like, because not everybody's comfortable there, and how to interview with impact. So it's a full stack or comprehensive masterclass. And if you're not interested in coaching, I have a $200 discount on my do-it-yourself Job Search Mastery. So if you're just interested in the resources and you're a resourceful person, this is a great option for you. So let's move into the Q&A.
Hello, Aaron. How you doing? We had a ton of questions come through.
Hey, questions.
Yeah. So people, please be patient. We'll try and get through all of them. First question, how will AI automation affect future job search? I heard they will replace millions of low-skilled and non-skilled jobs, even STEM jobs.
Yeah, great question. Great question. So AI will impact our industries, but keep in mind, it will, for one, not happen overnight, right? So things that are easily repeatable. What I'm seeing right now is accountants, for example, accounting, stock trading. That we already know about delivery drivers and that sort of thing, which is interesting because that's a fairly complex task because driving isn't that easy. But we're seeing waitresses also. Waitressing will be something will be replaced. You can expect not to have anybody checking you out at the grocery store. So just keep in mind it will be these types of roles that will be impacted first. And then anything that is repeatable. So a task that is repeatable will be something that will be more immediately impacted by artificial intelligence.
This is more of a comment. It says, that's interesting. I still hear from various webinars that 70 to 80% of jobs are through I can assume you get through networking.
Yeah, everybody, it drives me nuts because it's such a common quote. Nobody thinks about it. Like nobody thinks to actually look into the research behind it. And I'm not one of those people that just, hit search on Google. Search is not research. I do research, and it's 80% of jobs is not, no, it's not found that way anymore. That's a 10-year-old quote, quite literally, or actually older now. So just keep in mind that networking is important. It's just slightly different, so more strategic in nature, and just know that it has more impact with smaller companies.
Okay. I was let go a few weeks ago and have reestablished my contracting business. Any tips for finding contracting work?
How robust is your network? That's my very first question for anybody going, to be an entrepreneur. By the way, congratulations on being an entrepreneur. I know it's hard what you're going through, but at least you have an avenue for your energies. So how robust is your network, and is it relevant to the type of work that you want? That's number one. And number two, who's your ideal client? Be very clear on that. There's a lot more steps, but I would highly recommend you seek somebody that is a career, an entrepreneurial career coach to help you understand how to target and how to reach your market, because you want to go, once you define who your ideal client is, you want to be able to market to that ideal client and speak to that ideal client where they congregate. If that makes sense. And there's a lot more to it than that, but hopefully that kind of helps send you in the right direction. Oh, by the way, your company name is important. Quick funny story. So you can find me at cotyurban.com, which is easy, or upsolutions.net. Now, when I first created my business, it was a long time ago, and I had illusions of, still being a Lean Six Sigma black belt consulting, which is a lot harder than it sounds. So I had Urban Professional Performance Solutions, and this is really great because I can tailor that down to Up Solutions. And my engineer husband came down into my office just as I pressed submit on my LLC, and he goes, UPP Solutions. I'm like, oh no, it sounds like I'm selling adult diapers. I've been stuck with it ever since.
That's funny. Next question. It says, it appears resumes are only used to search for keywords. Guessing which keywords are of interest to the HR department is a challenge. Is this an accurate perception?
Yes and no. So keywords matter at the first stage gate. You have 3 stage gates. First one's applicant tracking system, so the technical side of it to get seen by a real person in the first place. And then at the HR, at the internal and external recruiter, they're really looking for relevancy very quickly because our brains naturally look for patterns, so they fine tune that like 5 or 6 seconds. So you need to be highly relevant. And it's not just keywords, because if you just focus on keywords and forget about articulating your accomplishments, once you get to that second and third stage gate with a hiring manager, you'll lose out, even if you get through the ATS. So just know that there's more than just keywords. And top tip, look in the job description for your keywords, okay, if you're worried about that.
Okay. Is there an optimal match, and he has a percentage sign after match, to the job description?
Yes, actually you want to be over 60% and under 89. And the reason you don't want to go over 89% is because you might be flagged as suspicious. And you can thank all the people who have taken the job description and put their name on it and submitted it.
That's funny. It says, next question says, how far should the LinkedIn profile go? I have heard that it should only go 15 years. I previously went all the way to the start when I started.
So really it's a date range. And then and this will change, so it'll keep creeping up. So right now, around about year 2000 is the cutoff. And I would say in the next 5 years, I will start creeping up to like 2012, 2005, 2008. So it'll keep creeping up, but around about, you don't want to go much further than 15 years. You certainly don't want to go past year 2000. And it also depends on what types of roles that you're seeking. Okay, so if you are looking for a C-suite role, yeah, you can have a lot of years experience on there. And also, relevancy. If you have early jobs that are completely irrelevant to where you're going now, you don't need to keep them. So hopefully that helps you.
Next question. He says, is it possible with an associate's degree in engineering physics to land an internship? I'm graduating with my associates in June and will transfer to a 4-year university in the fall, but I would like to get an internship this summer.
Okay, so you're going into nutrition?
She said engineering physics.
Engineering physics. All right. I must have missed something in that. I'm sorry, Daryl, can you repeat that? I just want to make sure I understand.
She just says, I have an associate's degree. Is it possible with an associate's degree in engineering physics to land an internship? I'm graduating with my.
Yes. Again, it depends on the company, right? It depends on what you're doing, because there will be some types of work that you'll be restricted from when it comes to engineering physics. But with an associate's degree for an internship, yes, absolutely. Just know that you don't always get paid. So if you're looking for a paid internship, the pay might be pretty low. It's usually commensurate with what type of education that you have. That makes sense.
It's about 3 questions in the same genre. It says, what is an appropriate font for an online resume? Is Arial font scannable?
Yes, Arial font is any sans serif. And what that means is not any little tick marks. So Arial or Calibri is usually best. And it's also easier to read. Research has proven that too. Any serif font like Times New Roman or something like that, they're harder to read. So the human eye can't, and the brain can't translate it as fast.
How current does a profile photo need to be?
Well, it depends how graceful you age. I had a gentleman show up for a meeting one time and I didn't recognize him. So you don't want to do that. So as long as it looks like you and it's a good photo, good. If it doesn't look like you anymore, you might want to change it. Just keep it relatively current and make sure that it looks like you.
All right, I may get this wrong. It says, are resumes created by LaTeX, capital L-A, capital T-E-X, digital compatible? LaTeX.
Yeah, that's a technology I believe he's referring to, or she is referring to.
Yeah.
So are resumes created by them or for them?
It says created by them.
By them.
Are they digitally compatible?
I would have to look that up to see. That sounds like to me that is a piece of software that produces a document. I would have to actually look it up and do a little research before I can accurately answer that. So you have my contact information here. If you don't mind just reaching out to me in person so I can understand a little bit better what you're asking and make sure I get you the right answer.
Okay, next question. It says, are there other domains similar to LinkedIn that are available for job seekers?
Not right now. It would be great if there were. In a way, yes and no, because that way you don't have to be on 2 different ones, and that'd be kind of a pain. So having a one-stop shop is convenient, but they also might have a monopoly. So what is being beta tested and sends my HR clients into a bit of a tizzy because it may violate some legal restrictions, but what's being beta tested right now is a repository for all your your information, any certifications you have, test, your education, all your transcripts, your resume, the everything. And it's just a place where employers can pay a subscription to then sift and vet based on their searching parameters for viable candidates. That is something that's being beta tested. It's not taken off tremendously yet, but it is in the works. And the reason that this is needful is what I predict in the future, and it probably is coming out faster than I realize, is that you will not apply for your own jobs in the future. We all have our own personal AI, a little puck sitting around your Google, your Alexa, or whatever, and you'll be asking that little personal AI assistant to find you a job, and that's real. It's coming, people. just be ready.
A lot of IEEE members give tutorials, speak at conferences, give posters. Where do you put this on LinkedIn? There does not seem to be a good section.
Oh yeah, so presenters and speakers, there used to be, and it really makes me mad they took it off. So there used to be, and what you can do, and what I recommend, is if you presented, if you have done tutorials or workshops or anything like that's relevant and helpful to grow your career and demonstrate your professional expertise, you can add it as media. So you want to save the original site, the original event site, particularly the one linking to your presentation or your breakout session or whatever that was, and you want to save that to either your about section as a career highlight, or if you have a lot of them and you like do them frequently for your work, you probably want to associate it with the actual experience itself. So hopefully that helps you. But yeah, it's really irritating because they used to have a section for presentations, speaking events, and they don't anymore.
Okay. You mentioned about quantifying our impact. Could you give us some examples in terms of numbers other than money?
Numbers other than money. Well, it can be percentages too. So keep in mind, let's just say you save time in a process. That doesn't have to be money, although here's something that really is interesting because we, for some reason, think that everybody can see inside your brain, and they can't. People only know what you tell them. So it's okay to estimate unless you are talking about a lot of money, multi-millions, and then you probably don't want to estimate too much. And what's interesting though, the larger number gets, anyway. So when it comes to percentages, if you don't feel comfortable with figuring out what the dollars and cents is, you just use a percentage. So I saved 75% in such and such process, and that netted end result, right? So hopefully that answers your question. But the impact inventory guide does give you a little bit more detail there.
Any tips to those who have been out of the workforce for longer than 5 years?
Been out of the workforce for longer than 5 years, probably you took a break to take care of a family member or start a family or whatever that might look like for you. Make sure you articulate that, because what most people don't is they want to pretend like it never happened. Recruiters and HR professionals know you have a life. So you want to make sure that you articulate in your dossier, career pause due to X reason. If you have been able to leverage any of your skills during that time, say so. Okay. And it's important also to keep consistent with any certifications. I highly recommend anybody who has taken a career pause or thinking about taking a career pause to keep in contact with your network. Keep up to date with industry trends. Make sure you take classes to remain fresh, because even though you may not be necessarily looking to re-enter, I have a lot of clients that do come to me later on once their families moved, kids have grown, going to college. They want to re-enter because they want to keep active. So that's what I recommend. Hopefully that's applicable to you in your situation.
Erin, you have a few more minutes. I got a few more questions. Okay. I see a lot of jobs have many requirements and bullet points, and I only fit about 50 to 60% of them. Do you think I should still apply?
Yes. Actually, 60% is pretty good. Now, the only time you might want to be a little concerned is if they state in strong language, you must have X or we will not consider you. Then that's probably a roadblock you can't overcome. But if, let's just say they're asking for 10 years experience and you have 8, you're a great candidate. I mean, are you kidding me? Don't think you have to hit it on the money. It's fine. If they say 2 to 3 years experience, if you have passing knowledge, you can probably get by. So keep in mind that all these have some flex room within reason, unless there's strong language saying you must have this. You want a little bit of stretch room. So if you have over 50% of knowledge, then go ahead and apply because you want that stretch room. You want to be able to grow in your role.
Could you please provide more insight into how much detail should go into the LinkedIn About section? In what way will it differ from the profile describing different work experience?
Right. So the About section is really your professional introduction. The first thing you want to do is introduce yourself as professional. What is your brand? So what are you known for? What are you known as a go-to person for? What's your highlights, skills, and abilities? And most importantly, how does that matter to your industry? So what are you able to deliver? So that is your introduction first. And then I highly recommend that you include several bullet points on specific example of how you've leveraged said skills to a net positive outcome. Right? And then a good practice at the bottom is just to mention any other types of skills or anything that will help you, like global experience or has managed project managers over multiple countries. Just anything that will help you be more relevant and elevate your career.
How should I present volunteer positions? I am a VP of communications for a local nonprofit, but it is an unpaid volunteer position.
Okay, if that is all you do, then and you don't have a full-time job elsewhere, then I would put that in your experience section. It is something you do in additional to your full-time job, then I would put that in the volunteer section. But if that is all you do, that's what your quote-unquote job, then you want to put that in your volunteer section. That is also, by the way, a great way to kind of close the gap on a career pause or a gap in your employment history.
Okay, next question. There are green cards which are granted based on national interest or extraordinary ability. Are they worth mentioning in the resume? I'm sorry, their words come together. in the resume here, are they worth mentioning in the resume?
Mm-hmm. That's a tough question. We're all familiar with the political climate right now. So if you have citizenship status you have a green card that allows you to stay in the U.S., in other words, then I would definitely put that in there if there's any question about it. If there is not really a reason to have a question, I wouldn't draw attention to it necessarily. For those people who need sponsorship to stay in the U.S., it's a tough climate right now. I won't sugarcoat that. So hopefully that helped your question, help answer your question. And again, I share my contact information with you just in case I didn't quite hit it on the mark, and you can reach out to me.
Here's the final question. It says, what if the job is a CIO position and I have not been a CIO previously? How should I position my resume and cover letter? Do I acknowledge my gaps in the cover letter?
It's fine to go for a C-suite position if you've not been in a C-suite position before, if you've been in a role that meets the requirements of that C-level position. So ideally, you will have been at the senior vice president or office of the CEO or COO or CIO in a previous role. I highly recommend that you reach out to me directly because there's a lot more that goes into that because there are certain quote unquote buckets that they'll be looking for you to fill to be ideal match for that role. So I do recommend you reach out to me about that.
Aaron, I actually have one other question just come in. It says, for those applying for engineering jobs with a master's or PhD and some internship experience, what is the equivalent in years of experience?
I love that question. I wish my husband was in the room. He's a PhD mechanical engineer. So some industries, depending on what your PhD happens to be in, equivalates that to about 5 years experience in the workplace. And that's a rough estimate, okay? So I would pay attention to the job description, but just know that if they have a requirement and that you do not meet, it's not like you can just I have a PhD and therefore I know all. That doesn't work that way. So I would encourage people to understand that education, while important, doesn't necessarily exceed experience. But I get where you're coming from and trying to understand what that commiserate level is for you. And I would say around about 2 to 5 years in experience on the job. And it also depends on what your PhD thesis was in as well, because that will help you land a job if you, hopefully you got your thesis in a target area that you're interested in. So that also helps tremendously.
All right, well, Erin, thank you so much. I think a few more questions came in, but we're going to go ahead and close up shop. Like Erin said, I guess she's open to taking more questions if you want to reach out to her privately. Erin, I want to thank you so much from IEEE USA for doing this webinar for us. Chris, do you have any final words?
Last thing I'll say is that everybody who registered, who also attended this webinar, will receive all the information along with their PDH certificates.
All right, cool. Well, thank you so much. Oh, there's another question came in. Yes, this webinar is being recorded and will be up on the IEEE USA website, I'm guessing before the end of the week for people to rewatch. That's it, Erin. If you have any final words, please share them with you. Share them with us.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. And please do feel free to reach out and connect with me. I'm interested in connecting, and I'm an open connector, and I'm open to questions if you have any questions that weren't quite answered in our time today.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. I will be ending the webinar. Thank you so much, everyone, and bye-bye.